Hello everyone, welcome to Why Study Africa. My name is Leslie Sizemore.
I'm Mara Smith.
I'm John Thress.
And I'm Emily Holcomb.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word Africa?
Forests or like animals, I don't know, something like that.
I would say like slavery and segregation, tribes and exotic animals.
I think of the child armies run by Joseph Kony.
Animals and starving children.
As you can see, most of these words are very stereotypical of Westerners' view of Africa. Keim opens the first chapter of his book, Mistaking Africa, by noting that most of us who are American know little about Africa. We might have studied Africa for a few weeks in school or glanced occasionally at newspaper headlines about genocide, AIDS, malaria, or civil war, but rarely have we actually thought seriously about Africa. By studying the continent and giving it worth, you are therefore making an attempt to understand the culture and the people. We must stop using Africa as entertainment. We must stop viewing the traditional ways of some Africans as a lack of progress. As Keim describes, the word exotic describes the point. Exotic portrays African culture as excitingly different. Usually this is at the expense of African culture, an extraordinarily large portion of which is removed from its everyday context in a way that allows us to believe that the wider culture itself is wholly extraordinary. Curtis Keim argues that this is not only one of the most fundamental issues in not only how other people see Africa, but also the evolving racism that still prevails in our society. Most of our media focuses on the African environment and the problem of poverty in Africa instead of the everyday lives of the people that live there. So why study Africa? To educate ignorance and combat stereotypes and racism.
Where did the first humans originate?
Somewhere like in the Middle East, maybe?
Isn't it like the Garden of Eden, Latin America?
The Middle East.
Mesopotamia. There is sufficient evidence to convince one that humanity arose out of Africa. In particular, Richard Pankhurst discusses in his book, The Ethiopians, A History, that there has been a lot of evidence to support the claim that humanity came out of the African Rift Valley. The most crucial piece of evidence to support this claim comes from the remains of a hominid that is estimated to date back to 3.2 million years ago. This particular hominid has been called Lucy. Pankhurst further describes Lucy as being around 3.5 feet tall and is estimated to have weighed 60 or so pounds. Lucy had an ape-like brain but was walking on 2 legs. In another source, Harold Marcus, in his book A History of Ethiopia, states that Lucy had just begun its evolution toward intelligence. Lucy was an incredibly important discovery as it shows us more about where we as humans come from. This history started in Africa, thus supporting the idea that African history is incredibly important.
What was the ancient African political structure?
Kind of just like tribal leadership, not really a big government.
Were there any?
There would be maybe a chief in the tribes and maybe some people that did what he told them to.
No idea. I don't know.
Didn't they have democracy?
This continent as a whole seems to be left out of many history books, but like any other continent, there are lessons to be learned and patterns to be observed. History is known to repeat itself, so there is no good in leaving out such a huge chunk of history. The study of the Oromo and their Gada system sheds much light on political complexity of Africa. Studying this political system is beneficial because it works so well. Gada government comprised a hierarchy of 3 levels of government: the national, the regional, and the local. This sounds oddly familiar to the United States Republic democracy. By looking at this practice of this government in past times, we can see what worked and what did not. It could shed light on current issues or even warn of problems that could come up. The Oromo democratic culture of Gada was and is the complete opposite of the Abyssinian monarchical autocratic culture. Since these 2 cultures have existed beside each other for so long, it would be useful to study their relations. The whole world does not function under a democracy, and understanding how to cope with different cultures and different ways of operating a country would be greatly beneficial by America as a whole.
Has African languages had any effect on modern-day languages?
Probably not, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has.
No, I don't think it has.
No, I don't think they have.
No, they didn't.
Kwame Appiah discusses the topic of language in Africa and the invention of Africa. He argues that although there are strong living traditions of oral culture, many African languages are not observed outside communities. He says that few Black American states have the privilege of corresponding to a single traditional linguistic community. This is in part due to colonialism, and Opia argues that Africa is not given the credit it is deserved for its influence on modern language. Many European languages, and even modern-day English, have some African origins. So many countries owe Africa their national languages. If more people study Africa and learned important facts such as the problem of language in Africa and how many of the languages we use today have some African origin, we would be more aware of an aspect of our world in our own everyday lives. It would make us appreciate our languages, which are many times not valued as much as they should be. Language is an important part of a nation's identity, and it unites its people in a way that connects them in a special manner.
I'm Leslie Sizemore.
I'm Emily Holcomb.
I'm John Thrust.
I'm Mara Smith.
And that's
Why? Study.
Africa. Oh, gotta cut the shaking out. We have to cut it out.
I think it's funny because I literally just going